This has to begin with, of all things, a line off the movie Aliens. Everybody's seen it, right? Stay frosty. Michael Biehn as Corporal Hicks, one of the last survivors, on this planet, and they're surrounded by aliens, and everyone they're going to die. They're pretty sure, and he's telling his other Marines, "Okay, I know it's heavy, but you got to stay frosty." For some reason, that line stuck in my head while all of this was happening, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the topic. I was in a literature class in university. I was thus an undergrad trying to write short stories, so don't worry, I'm not going to read them. And I was trying to write about something that was traumatic to me. A friend of mine killed herself in high school, and I was trying to write about it, and I was trying to write about it as frosty as humanly possible, because I didn't want to be accused of being sentimental or being earnest. I realized I've already written bad stuff about this. It's something that I can't forget. Maybe I could do this as reportage. Maybe if I write out everything that upset me in black and white as coldly as possible, at worst, I'm going to write something that someone's going to read and go, hey, it's boring. Or I might have an epiphany. I may actually write something and think, okay, now I know why this sticks in my head of all things. And here's the other part that doesn't relate. It's a Dylan Thomas poem. I've been reading a lot of poetry. He wrote a piece called "The Refusal to Mourn the Death of a Child by Fire in London." That has nothing to do with my friend who killed herself or nothing to do with me in third year university. But there was a line in that about, "I will not murder the mankind for her going with a grave truth, nor blaspheme down the stations of the breath with any further elegy of innocence and youth." In short, don't make something glossy. Just write what happened. I'm in a writing class that is supposed to be one of those safe spaces. I wrote about finding out about her death and the events that went up to the funeral, and I couldn't write anymore. I read the story. It takes around 5 minutes, and it's in a class with 7 or 8 people who have also taken 7 or 8 minutes to read their stories. And the response is, wow, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. There's one person in the class who has an odd response. She says, oh, I don't get that part about her with the wrists. Because this girl had been anorexic at one point. And in the story, I said, before she killed herself, I'd seen her a few days before, and I noticed that her wrists were scrawny again. And I could no longer remember when she didn't look anorexic and drawn. And this woman in the class said, I can't buy that. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. Is it not written properly? She said, no, I don't think it happened. Okay. Are you saying that I made it up? No, I don't think you made it up, Michael. I think it didn't happen, but you still wrote it. Yeah. I said, okay, you can't do that. I mean, if you think I've made it up for the sake of effect, no, I don't think it was effective at all. I don't think it happened. And I'm not offended by this, but I'm confused. She was anorexic. I mean, that's part of the reason she killed herself. And you can believe her. Accuse me of lying. I mean, just tell me I made it up. I don't think you made it up. I think it didn't happen. What are you telling me? I'm already really precarious. I am writing over a grave. That's not frosty on my part. The professor, his last name was Joyce. Yes, no relation to James Joyce, but his last name was Joyce. He kind of stepped in and he separated us and he said, Catherine, you really can't say that. And Michael, maybe you should calm down. I had gone in trying to be cold about this and I had failed. So I'm not in the best of moods. Around a day later, I am talking with Professor Joyce and he's very flat. I like him. He's very flat. He's very unemotional. He is frosty. And he's saying, okay, Michael, your story, it's you could cut it in half and I might get your point, but I think it was too long. I mean, this means something to you and it's a little too long, but you can't take this too seriously. I mean, there's no way out of this situation. She killed herself. You can't get out of that. And you shouldn't write about it so much. Do it once and get out of your system. And he's not being mean. He's not being cynical. He was being very straightforward. I'm thinking, okay, Frosty. I like Frosty. I can deal with this. But he drops a weird anecdote, and he said, "No, I went to the University of Calgary with somebody who would never shut up about the fact that they were convinced they had to kill themselves. I mean, that was sort of his thing. He'd have a few too many drinks and he'd say that. And eventually his girlfriend said, you know what you should do? Don't do what you're saying. I mean, you're saying you want to go in the woods and take a bottle of pills and then stare at the sky. Don't do that, because some deer is going to find you or some wolf is going to find you and eat you and they're going to die. If you have to do this, do it in a bathtub, cut your wrists, don't bother anybody. Two things. Number one, that's kind of cold. And number two, I'd heard that. Anybody in this audience, is that a thing? Is it a line from a movie? Is it some throwaway comment from a novel I didn't read? I have actually gone online to try to find that type of a reference, and I can't find it. But even at the time, I thought, that's fake. That whole story is fake. It struck me as being incorrect. Like it's something. It's like an urban myth. It's like one of those stories that can't actually happen. But he didn't tell me this to be mean. He was telling me this because he believed it, and fine, okay, I can deal with that. None of this would matter now. None of this would possibly matter in the year 2025 to me, except there was an unfortunate circumstance at the same time. If anybody watching this is careful enough to figure out how old I am and where I probably went to university, you might know the person I'm talking about, but I don't want to use their name. Canadian poet. He was very famous. He was part of the faculty. I never met the dude. I'd read his stuff. And I was supposed to go to a reading of his the week after my little contretemps in that writing workshop. He died suddenly. Around 3 days after I talked to Professor Joyce. And this poet, there's no listing of the cause of death. I don't know what killed him. But what I know is that in the faculty and among the student body, it was assumed that this guy had killed himself. Want to know my response? It was, oh, that's terrible. Full stop. I had never met him. I didn't take a class with him. I'd read his poems. And this was in the primitive times, before they can say that a class is canceled via email or via text. I'd gotten to school, found out about this death, and found out there's going to be a memorial at this funeral home in North Toronto, and then there's going to be a funeral at 5 o'clock. My class with Professor Joyce was canceled. Joyce and this dude were very close friends. We've been told that we can pick up a reading list. Hard copy piece of paper. You have to walk in, you pick up the list, you walk out of the room. And I walk into the classroom. Professor Joyce is over there talking to a few people. I hear him saying, I know it's been a very big shock for all of us. No one could have possibly expected this, and so on. And 2 or 3 people walk in, they get their papers, they walk out. I look at Joyce, I see him for a second, I walk to the desk, I pick up my piece of paper, I'm about to leave, and he says, "Why are you here?" Shocking the people he's talking to, and shocking me. And I look at him, and a little more controlled, he says, "Why are you here now?" And I realize that he probably thinks I'm going to give him some variation of, "I told you so," in terms of how one responds to a suicide. Or that maybe I am there to approach him and pat his wrist gently and say, "I know how you feel. I'm not doing this. I don't want to be within 50 feet of this son of a bitch. Firstly, I don't want to be dragged into whatever he is going through. Secondly, I have absolutely no idea how he feels. I do not know how he feels. I know what I see. I am seeing panic. I am seeing anger and confusion and incredibly thick sadness. But it's none of my business. I didn't know the deceased, and I don't know Joyce other than the fact that he may or may not give me a decent mark. And I am astonishingly pissed off because I'm being dragged into whatever nightmare is happening. I keep thinking, was I the 18th person there? He was going to be pissed off at number 18, no matter who it was, or does he have some connection to me? And I'm millimeters from screaming at him, and I have an out for once. Get frosty, right? He is looking for a fight. Everyone in the room is looking shocked as if we are continuing a conversation we've never had. But after a couple of seconds, and as cold as I can say it, I said, "Do you need to be dropped off at the funeral home?" And he looks confused. And I said, "It's going to take you an hour and a half by bus. I live 10 minutes away from it. I drove today. I can drop you off. You'll be there in 40 minutes. And after a couple of seconds, he says, 3:30, front of the building. And I have my reading list. I walk out of the office. I've just lied to him, by the way. I do have a car that day. I don't live anywhere close to this funeral home, but I know where it is. And if getting him there will shut him up and get me out of his head over his panic and his association with whatever he thinks I'm going to do, and maybe get myself out of my head remembering what I went through, it's a worthy payoff. So at 3:30, I pull up in front of this building, and he eventually walks out, gets in the car. It's my parents' car. They are CBC Metro Morning listeners, so we're listening to this incredibly boring drive time, slightly smug DJs talking about something they consider incredibly important about being in Toronto or Canada or something. It's the most boring stuff I can have. And I don't turn the radio off and I say, yeah, like half an hour maybe. I take this very long drive along incredibly congested roads into Richmond Hill, Ontario, to a funeral home I've gone to once for a piano teacher. And he doesn't say a word. Every so often, he will kind of look at me and he will look out the window and he will take a breath as if he's going to say something. And then he doesn't. But I think after 40 minutes in a car with me, he's realized that I'm not going to do anything other than pray he leaves my car. And we get to the home. It's one of those things where you have to drive through, and I leave him at the front door, park the car, and I say, here you go. And he doesn't even look awake. At one point he said, it's not till 5. And I said, visitation, they'll give you coffee. I have nothing else to say. And he sat there, and every so often he would inhale, and then finally he just opened the door and looked at me, and he nodded, closed the door. And it took me around an hour to drive home. And it was over. All of this weird mix of trauma and confusion and how dare you and no, how dare you over an event that may or may not have happened. One more time. I do not know how this poet died. I just know what we thought at the time. This could all have been for nothing. The next week, he's back in class, I'm in class, barely speaks to me. No one mentions this poet's death. At the end of the class, he does wander by and he says, hey, I needed that ride. I think maybe I should at least stand you a drink. I said, you don't have to. He said, well, no, I'll just pick up a tab. And I said, you don't need to. I don't want to be inconsiderate, but this is not my business. I can barely handle my own business. I don't think I can handle his, and I can't handle his sense of responsibility for me doing what was the least I could do by design, is to maybe help this guy and get him out of my car. Now, I've never told this story because it doesn't complete anything other than pointing out how incredibly chaotic and crazy that type of a situation is, that you're going to be angry and upset, and it's going to switch and swirl into something that you cannot possibly understand. I think I only want to say it because of that idea one more time. Maybe if I manifest it, maybe if I explain it, if I can at least put down the black and white at the end of it, you can see maybe there's a pattern, maybe there's a reason to remember it, maybe there's something you can pull out of it. I like to think completely accidentally I did the right thing for this guy. I got him out. I took him where he had to be and I never mentioned it again. Maybe it helped him. Maybe in telling the story, someone else might hear it and say, okay, yeah, it's enough to realize that it's terrible. And if once you do that, at least you can put it in a box. And once it's in a box, you can put it away, or you can look at it and say, yeah, that was awful, but it's over. It is over, right? Thank you. Cheers.